Okay, welcome to our session, my session, MuleSoft Anypoint Platform for Salesforce developers and administrators. My name is René Winkelmeier, and I hope to introduce you to some of the basic concepts of how and where you can use Anypoint Platform. But first of all, who of you has used this product yet? A few. Okay, which is great, because all the other people in this room are here to learn a bit. You likely saw the very most important slide that you will see at all Dreamforce, our forward-looking statement. So please make all buying decisions based on anything which is currently available in product, maybe not on what you see in my session. So get your hands on and make your final decision on your own experience. And now let's talk about Anypoint Platform, and let's talk first about a bit integration. I have a bit of experience with developing applications and especially integrations. Over the last 20 years, and yes, I'm that old, I had to integrate many different systems. Like, 20 different SMS providers across several systems. I had to create data pumps between data warehouse A and that kind of database. And then please, 2 weeks later, connect this cloud service in between, right? You just finished your integration project, everything was tested, everything was in production, and then the next change request came in, and you had to basically restart those things. And as a developer, I like that, right? Because it pays my job, because I can develop on the platform. But now in 2018, integration shouldn't be that hard. I don't want to create the 20th SMS integration. I don't want to create the 20th data pump to that database. Oh, we have a new MongoDB over there. Oh, we have a new MySQL database over there. We need some data out of it. How can we surface that in Salesforce? And maybe enrich that on that way with some other data. It shouldn't be that hard, and I don't want to recreate the wheel any time. And one outcome of this is when you have those requests to connect several systems is that you A, have to manually recreate them, and B, it's often a point-to-point connection, isn't it? You have a database and a target system, and you create a point-to-point connection, which means the reusability is often not that high, because you connect with those specific credentials for the specific use case. And 3 weeks later, someone else wants to connect to that database. Maybe a different use case, but then you have to implement that on their side. Also share credentials, do the same thing. And at the end, you have a spaghetti environment like this. If you look into your application infrastructure in your company, how many applications do you have? 10, 20, 100, 200, depending on the size of your company, a lot of them. How many of you would like to reuse the connectivity between those applications? Right? Many? Only a few? Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's the thing. You want to just reuse, build once, and consume everywhere. And this is where Anypoint can help you. And I would have wished that something like this had existed 20 years ago, when I wrote my really first implementations, and I shouldn't say this, on Solaris. A few of you in this room maybe know this system already, maybe 2 or 3. Okay, I'm that old, damn. Okay, how can MuleSoft help you? And we will soon skip slides and go into real world, into showing you the product and how it helps me nowadays when I build our demos, really to integrate faster and to share assets with our team. The approach that MuleSoft is taking with their API-led approach is that you put an API in front of every system. Just imagine in this case, we have at the bottom Salesforce and some other systems. And both systems have customer data in them. How would you connect normally to them? From, let's say, a web app. You would ask a developer like write me an API, and write me another API. And then in your web application, you would have to connect to both APIs somehow, right? Because you would have to read both data. And the API-led approach simplifies it. Imagine that both customer systems would expose their API, which is called in Anypoint terms a system API because it's mostly a system of record. Then you would build on top of that a composite API that would basically hide the complexity of the underlying systems from the consumer, right? So if I build my web app, and it could also be Salesforce who would connect to those systems, you wouldn't have to care about what is the authentication, where does the system lie, what is a specific spec of that API. You wouldn't have to take care of that because you build a composite API on top of that. And it also allows you to reuse those things because once you have this composite API in place, you as a developer or as an administrator, sorry, I'm not saying that too often, you don't have to take care about the underlying implementation itself. When I build my Salesforce component, or if I invoke something via a flow, I don't want to be bothered which system it is. And if my company decides tomorrow to change a system, best case would be that I don't have to touch anything, that it just works, right? I mean, in IT, we never change systems, right? Like, no, not really. And to my very first last slide, and then we will dig into the demo, is what makes Anypoint? What really makes Anypoint? And first of all, there is a design center, and we will dig into this quite extensively. This allows you to use a kind of declarative interface for building your integrations across numerous systems, be it Salesforce, be it MongoDB, be it some, AS400 environment that you may still have, or something, really proprietary in your company. It doesn't matter, right? You can connect to everything, and I really mean that. Secondly, we're living in a hybrid world, right? Salesforce is a cloud environment, that's great, but in the real world you have on-premise and you have hybrid approaches, and you have private cloud. And you likely need to connect all those systems somehow. And with Anypoint, you have the choice where you want to run this. You can run pure cloud, or if you have restrictions in your company and connectivity needs to be on-premise, no problem, there's an on-premise connector, on-premise environment. And if you want to run hybrid with both of it, no problem, you can just manage that across all different environments. And it can scale, right? So if you have 100 requests per day, if you have 1 billion requests per day, you just need to scale up your instances with that. And the most important part is because simplification and reusability is a center, there is something called the exchange. I mean, we all know the app exchange, right? Where you can, create your app, install that in your Salesforce org, and then use it. Anypoint has a built-in exchange, so once a connector is built, you can reuse it across your company. And Anypoint also provides hundreds of pre-built, ready-made connectors that you can just drop into integrations. You don't actually have to care about the implementation, you just have to configure the connectivity. And we will use I would say, a simple example of that. So let's go out of slides, because I actually want to show something. How many of you have already looked into a Winter 19 org already? That should be a bit more, please. So end of this week, yes? Okay, those who looked into a 2016 org, as we call that, likely saw already that we have an integration tree just for that. And on this menu item, you will see all the different integration options that you can use within a Salesforce environment. And this is always the first point where I go and look into what's built in and what can I use with clicks and not code. I like to develop in Apex. I really like it. But if there's something that I can just click together, even easier, right? Because then at the end, it frees me from crafting repetitive tasks. I don't want to create the 20th trigger that sends an account data an account field to some external service. If I can do that easier, awesome. So let's use some built-in integrations. What you will see soon, so if you have a 2016 org or a developer edition, a winter developer edition, you will see a brand new feature which is called change data capture, which is now in developer preview. It's really, really amazing because it basically allows you to get near real-time record changes on any type of record. So once you change a record or create a record or update a record, change data capture basically pumps that data into a bus, and you can subscribe, like with a streaming API from external, and get a near real-time change of that, which is pretty amazing. We all know and love data import wizard and data loader, that's pretty sure. There's a new capability which is called data loader. This is provided by Anypoint. It's a web-based third-party service where you can create outside of the standard Anypoint platform data integration, so think standard ETL, which is kind of cool. And we all love and like, I hope so at least, external objects. I love them really much because I can develop just in Apex and use them in Lightning components like a standard object. And not to forget external services. Who's using external services yet? Okay, only 2. Who's using Flow? Okay. Who would like to, because that's a lot of people, who would like to call an external service from a flow? Right, okay, good. Then you should go with external services because this allows you to call an external service without writing Apex. As a developer, that means I don't have any work, and as an administrator, that means I can just invoke something externally without going to my developer, which is pretty cool. Now, having said that, let's go back to my example. So what I did, I crafted a simple account record over here, and I brought up this SMS example. I like to send them SMS, and I wrote those integrations, a dozen times. That could be some third-party vendor, that could be Twilio. You choose, you pick and choose. And if my phone now also works, because it should be a working demo, I can just send a simple SMS, which does not say a lot, to my phone, and let's hope that my wife doesn't call yet, which happened in the last session. Let's see if we hear it. Ta-da, it arrived, right? I'm just sending a simple SMS. The thing is, I didn't connect directly to an SMS provider. I used Anypoint and a built-in Twilio connector to actually send this SMS. And this means for me, as a developer, I don't have to take care about the actual implementation. If my company is changing tomorrow, the provider, fine. My application will still work. And let's take a look how I did this. For this, I'm switching to the Anypoint platform. And once you log in, you will see this welcome screen. This is basically the starting screen for you as a developer and administrator to actually build your own implementations. On the left, we have the design center. This is where you can craft your own APIs, or where you build your own applications. And we are going to build our own application pretty soon. On the right, this is more interesting for our administrators, is the whole the whole life cycle of an application or an API. Like, do you want to run this in a kind of preview mode, or do you want to run it in a sandbox or in production? Do you want to scale it up? Do you want additional security for your APIs? Or also something like Data Gateway, which gives you direct out-of-the-box connectivity to sources like MySQL, Oracle, and returns OData, so you can directly use it declaratively to create external objects, which is pretty cool. You're just going through a wizard, connecting to the data source, selecting an example from this MySQL table, I want to have those fields, and you're getting an endpoint that you can directly use as external object. And this is it's pretty cool. And the real powerful thing, the exchange. Because when I want to build an integration, I may already find one in the exchange. So if I scroll through this list, if I want to connect to Amazon S3 or Catalyst or MongoDB or Twilio or Appian, I mean, I can scroll down and down and down and down, and there are a ton of connectors available that I can just drag and drop into my integration. So what I did for our use case, I set up an API for my custom SMS provider. And for the very first thing that I did was I created an API. This is something that developers hopefully do all day long, because we are living in an API-first world. For you who are administrators, I think that should be something that you can easily dig if you're not already deep into this. And Anypoint provides a real rich interface where you can build your own API. Why is this important? Well, if I want to provide you as a Salesforce developer the capability of building against my API, of sending this SMS, we need a specification, right? We need a contract that we all can agree on. So this is the specification that I share internally in my organization. Like whoever wants to send an SMS, be it from Salesforce or whatever system you want to have in your company, I'm giving you a standard API interface, a standard contract that you can assume. You don't have to take care about the implementation. Hello? Okay. You don't have to take care about the implementation itself. And using a declarative tool, I just defined that, hey, everyone who sends to my server on /SMS/send with a body of, here we go, cell phone number and message, can send them SMS. No credentials, nothing. No, not at this stage, right? I mean, I'm securing my API that not everyone can send this, but this is a contract that I'm defining for my company for consumption. And whoever now wants actually to use this or wants to learn how to use the specification can go to the exchange, can search for SMS, because everything that I share internally can be consumed internally, can just learn, okay, I have to go to this server, and I have to pass those parameters, and then I can send SMS, which is pretty cool. Now, how do I use this? How do I use this actually? First of all, once I build my specification, I need something that actually also sends the SMS. For that, you can build something which is called a Mule application, and this is the real working horse. This is where you build the actual implementation. Because now we have an API specification which says /SMS/send. Now we need to build something that actually is doing this thing. And this is a real simple and small application. It has two things. An HTTP listener, which listens on my URL /SMS/send, which runs, in this example, on a MuleSoft cloud server. Kind of easy, right? So they provide also the server infrastructure for HTTP or HTTPS connectivity. And the only thing that I did was I used the built-in or the available pre-built Twilio connector to actually connect to that service. So what I'm doing now, and the way you can add such a connector is just you add the plus sign, and based on the available connectors in the exchange, you can just drag and drop it in, right? You just make a selection of whatever you would need in your data integration flow or your API flow to basically execute this. So I have my real simple connector over here, and I can also test that either from my Salesforce implementation, or I'm using Postman in this example. Let's
make that a bit bigger, and say, hello, y'all, today. And what you actually will see is this green line going through the flow. So you're also getting a view on your actual data flow from the entry point to the target point. So when I click into this and go into my input tab, I can see the actual message that was transferred, which is like, in this example, really small, right? But message and cell phone number is a specification that I defined in my API. When we would look at the code that I used in my Salesforce org, the API code that I made is quite different, because I have another spec. This is something that is expected here. When I look onto the output, which is coming from Twilio, is totally different. But I, as a developer, don't have to take care about this. Someone specified the SMS specification for me. I can use it in Salesforce or my other product, and Anypoint takes care of the transformation. Now, how is this useful for administrators? I mean, how many administrators are in the room? A few, this is great. How many of you also develop in Apex? Also a few, that's great. We need more of you. So one really cool thing that you can do is you can reuse this API specification that I built and use it in a flow without writing code. If you're familiar with API specifications, you likely know about Swagger, Open API specification, which is a standard format. And Anypoint is currently using RAML, which is another kind of format. It's just RAML at this point, so we can't switch back yet. As far as I know, the plan is that both formats will be soon supported. But you can take this specification, and I'm just doing this. I'm copying the whole specification because it is a spec. And Anypoint or MuleSoft provides a nice converter where you can say, hey, I have this RAML specification, and please convert that for me to Open API. That doesn't help you now at this moment, right? But now you have a translated specification to Open API. Why is this important? Because now you can use an API provided by Anypoint in your flows. In your flows. So if I would go to my Salesforce org and would use the external services, where I hope that next Dreamforce, more people will raise their hand, that they know this really awesome implementation. You can connect to an external service, which means you're getting a nice visit experience. I'm not showing the video. You define a name for the service. I call it SMS. You have to specify a name credential, which I already set up to my endpoint previously. And you can just paste this whole converted RAML specification down here. And based on this, we are auto-generating invocable actions that will show up in our most beloved cloud flow designer, right? We love Flash, right? It will change soon, as you hopefully will learn this week, but you will get invocable actions based on the specification. And once I hit next, I can go into Cloud Flow Designer and can just reuse those methods in my flow. Now I can just create a new flow and then send an SMS just right away from that, which is pretty cool. Now, but that's not everything. So let's go back into Anypoint, and I want to take a look at how you actually build an implementation. And it took me a while to find the right use case, but I think this is the most compelling, to just build something from scratch, right? But you understand how you actually would build an implementation. First of all, you have to decide how should such a data flow start. That can be an HTTP request, like I just showed. For example, you want to consume data in Salesforce. But it could also be someone needs data from your Salesforce instance. and wants to do something with it, right? How often does it happen? Often, right? Yeah. So, again, using the built-in or pre-built connectors, you define what is the trigger for this. This can be, for example, a scheduled action. You want to run something once an hour, every day, every 23 minutes, however, right? You define this, and this basically just kicks off in the backend a quartz job, so a cron job, and runs all this for you on the platform. For the sake of this demo, I'm going with an HTTP listener because that's really easy for me to invoke. And I want to listen to accounts search account name. And as you can see here, I'm just getting a new endpoint, and I'm saying whatever is on /accounts /search /the account name, that should trigger something. So let's go back. And I want to actually query data from Salesforce org. So I just look for Salesforce, and I can pick one of the pre-built Salesforce connectors, which I will do right now, and can then select one of the many available actions that I can run against my Salesforce instance. Change passwords, bulk jobs, you name it. You name it. In this case, I just want to run a simple Sozzle search. Yes, we can talk about limits, but in another session, right? This is I think a good use case example how to run this. So what I will add now is a real simple Sozzle search, because I want to search my Salesforce instance and pick the mobile number of my contact record to actually do something with it at the end. As you can see here, I have a colon before the account name, because this gives me the option to use a placeholder in my search. And you remember, I have in parentheses account name in my URI request. So this way, I can reuse the attribute from the request actually in my search, which I will do here. So account name, this is the one that I want to be replaced. Let's make it a bit bigger for you all. And use the attribute. I can actually, I'm losing sound, hello. URI params, and get my account name from this URI request. So I actually can reuse the request data. So let's do this. So, looks like easy. I'm clicking on run, and this will now deploy a real application in my design environment. Think of it like a developer environment. It's not in production, but you can actually run your test. And depending on how fast it is, I hope it will be a bit faster than it was this morning, we can actually see then the data flow coming in when I hit the URL, and it will execute a Sozzle search. So now the application is running. We can copy this link, which will go to the actual URL live in cloud. I have to admit, I cheated. I have that already in Postman. I run my search, which I have here with my last name, and I send this. We will actually see, hopefully, the data flow going through. There we go. Green line, everything is fine. My implementation is there. I just query data from Salesforce. For sure, there are credentials behind that, right? It's just not anonymous. When I look now into this card, I can see two things. First of all, any kind of data input, which didn't happen here, and the kind of data output. And if you ever did a Sozzle search via the REST API, you will likely know this kind of format of data which is coming back. So I'm getting a search records array, and I'm getting my record, and somewhere down here, I have my real phone number. Please don't text me. Okay? So again, I'm getting my actual data out of Salesforce. And now I can reuse this somewhere in my data flows. Somewhere. So this is a kind of complex data set, and I want to extract my phone number, right? I want to do something. Maybe send an SMS at the end of this demo, because I want to reuse things. So because I know my data is flowing in, I can say, okay, I'm getting an array. So let's use a for each component. And this for each component now says, give me an array, and I will iterate through all elements of that and give you each element as a distinct object. So I know that search records, and you see I get I get an IntelliSense for that. Search records, I should hit the right button. Search records is the array that it should loop through. And it also tells me like, hey, okay, what should happen with this? I can loop through it, but at some point you should give me something back. So I'm going and say, okay, I know that this will give me also another array, because it's an array of objects. So I'm going through another for each, and I know that record.children is also the right element. Still, I'm not at the end of the loop, because something should happen. So for the sake of simplicity, let's use a logger over here. And I just want to log the data out of here. So payload, there we go. So while this looks maybe a bit complicated, it's a real simple declarative way of just connecting to your Salesforce org, extracting some data, looping over all data sets, and there's no custom code yet involved, right? There's no custom code yet involved. So this is now running, which is great. So let's hit the URL again. And with a bit of luck, I'm getting my green line here. And let's see in the output, because I knew it will happen, I extracted all that data from that social search already. And I know that I have now a value of my phone number. It is important to mention that, because you see this word payload often, what basically happens is the incoming message, it's called a payload, or in MuleSoft terms, a Mule message. And this message carries the information from one step to the next step. So the output of the previous step will be transferred to the next step, and you can do something with it. So what I will do now is, I need this value, and because there could be more things in, I will just say, I'm going to transform that. And this is another powerful capability of Anypoint. You can take some kind of data model, and map it to another data model, because this JSON output is maybe not what my target implementation needs, right? So I prepared something for that, because it's easier just to copy and paste this. And what I'm doing is, I want a JSON output with the name cell phone number, and as my previous data said in the value key was my phone number, please take this value. And this is just the data that my SMS would need, right? So let's close this. I'm going to restart the application, which will hopefully be in time. There we go. That's a fun with live demos. There we go. We are running. I'm going to, again, hit this URL, have my green line on my data weave. I'm going to go to the Output tab, getting the exact same data, except that my phone number is null, so I copy and pasted something wrong. Thank you. but the exact same format that my SMS connector, which is part of my infrastructure in my company, just can consume, because that's the format that we agreed on. So it only takes me a few clicks to actually connect to my system API. I want to create an SMS. I don't have to specify anything special because the data just gets posted with a payload as Mule message, and I would send my SMS, right? And in this flow, and this flow is really a good example how you can trigger something externally, consume any kind of data, because if you have your Salesforce data in here and you want to enrich that, for example, with something else, right? I'm picking the phone number from my contact. I have data, for example, in Amazon SQS, or in, you pick it, in Hadoop, in Indeed, in MongoDB. You can just add that to your Mule message, transform that data, mix and match, and bring it to the system of your choice. I just see that we have 2 minutes for Q&A. So let me quickly bring up 2 slides, and there will be anyway here after the session. First of all, you will see my colleagues and myself on Thursday on the Salesforce for Developer keynote, 1 p.m. I hope you all will be here. Developers, administrators, we are all the same audience, so you're all welcome. And if you want to learn more about Anypoint, we just released 2 brand new projects, a quick start and a module on that where you can learn more. You can sign up for a trial on MuleSoft.com to just try it out. Questions on the mic, if possible?
Or I could just try to be loud.
Or try to be loud.
Thank you for the amazing talk. Second, how about staging? Can we have something where we provide a new service or a new integration first in some kind of QA environment where user acceptance testing is taking place before moving into production?
Yes, so the question was, can we provide a multi-environment steps, right? And yes, you can. So what you saw was the design environment, where you basically design your integration. And from that, you can deploy this integration in that current status to a higher environment. Let's say a sandbox environment or a UAT environment, however you define that. You can define multiple environments. The pre-built are sandbox and production. But if you have 4 different environments, you can just create them. And then you can go move this application, which is built in design, from one environment into the next stage. And then bring it ultimately to production. Yeah.
What are the license costs here?
That's a good question that I don't know. So the question was, what are the license costs? I don't know. I can talk about the software, but I'm not in pricing. I really don't know. So, but there may be salespeople somewhere around here who can tell you that.
Sorry.
No worries.
What is the link between the API you initially defined and then the implementation time? So it's linked because you're HTTP.
Yes. Okay. Yes and no. So the question was: is there a connect between the API that I defined and my connector implementation? So when you build an API specification, MuleSoft, at least in the web UI, automatically generates a connector for you, right? You have to implement in that connector the actual API implementation, but what then a consumer of your API specification in the Exchange can do, or in their flows, like I did, is basically click a plus sign, they connect to the API spec, and this was not my demo, you only point this API spec to the Mule app or third-party server where this is running, and everything is just handled by the API spec. It is also important to note that any security constraints that you would like to add, like OAuth, special headers, all those things, you apply that to an API spec. Right? So wherever you reuse this API spec, which is independent of the actual connector, you can use all those different levels of authentication and implementation. But you have to do 2 steps. There's also Anypoint Studio, which is an Eclipse-based IDE, which handles around 80% of the workload. So this is a real powerhouse. If you want to get a first test, Flow Designer is awesome. If you want to do, for example, SAP integration, that only works in the Eclipse-based IDE, which has a not so nice UI, but it's far more powerful. Okay.
How much of this will be going into integration class? What is the connection between Anypoint Platform and integration class?
Yes, yeah, last question. So you should go to the integration keynote for the actual information around this. The main part is that Anypoint itself will be our integration layer. You can build custom connectors as much as you want in Java.